Okay, Knights of the Old Republic 2. My all-time favorite video game, which I've written about at length, but I thought maybe I'd try something a little different so you could see something other than a wall of text. So we start off, we're a Jedi headed towards the mining world of Paragus, which is an asteroid colony. We're aboard the ship from the first game, the Ebonhawk, and it's badly damaged, and it's drifting towards the colony. And the first thing I want to point out here is, all Star Wars stories, at least in the old days, start off with a crawl and then a pan down to a ship coming in. And the first thing, this is the traditional Star Wars music, but it segues to this. I love the opening theme here. I love that it gives you the option to skip it. In KOTOR 1, you couldn't skip the prologue. And here's the Ebonhawk drifting in. Love the music on this. So you wake up, well, you're going to hear the voice of Kreia as you sit here in I think it's a Kolto tank.
Awaken.
For my money, that's the first line of the game, and at the time I didn't think anything of it the first time I played it, but as we'll see here, it's actually kind of a significant line. Kreia, as we'll get into later, is, I think, the greatest character in video game history, and she's the key, really, to all of this. It's interesting how this starts out with you alone, not really knowing what's going on the Paragus mining station. But very shortly into the game, Kreia is the first character you meet. She looks like she's dead. We see her here in the morgue. And then, you go over to inspect this other corpse. And sure enough, Kreia gets up.
Find what you're looking for amongst the dead?
She has some incredible voice acting.
I am Kreia, and I am your rescuer, as you are mine. Tell me, do you recall what happened?
The Paragus level, I'm gonna skip a lot here. I cannot cover this whole game. It would be a 20-hour video. Basically, so at some point, this ship, the Harbinger, which is the ship you were on, shows up at Paragus. And it's got this character aboard, who we later learn is called Darth Sion. He's one of the Sith Lords in the game. The other one we'll meet a little bit later. Well, I shouldn't say. There's a number of Sith Lords in the game. He's one of them. So eventually you and Kreia and Atton board the Harbinger to retrieve their asteroid drift codes and escape from Paragus. Atton is a sort of Han Solo rogue type character. You also have the T3M4, the droid that we saw in the beginning. And so you're going through the Harbinger, and I love this. The opening few hours of this game, you can just rush through and you won't know what happened. But if you watch these logs, the crew of the Harbinger and the workers at Paragus and all kinds of people leave these logs that you can uncover. And it gives you a lot of the backstory as to what happened and what's going on. And it fills you in on some stuff to do with the larger setting and the problems the galaxy's facing. Telos needs fuel, stuff's getting diverted to Onderon, and the first time through this, you don't know what any of this means, but the second time through, you realize it's all tied together. There's a background of civilization collapsing. I read an interview once with Chris Avallone, the designer of the game, and they mentioned how it's supposed to show a universe on the brink of collapse. And it really does that. Almost everything in the game has this sort of theme to it, which is about decay and decline of civilizations, and pairs nicely with being alone on this damaged ship with low-level emergency lighting. You get ambushed by these assassins every so often, and you combine that atmosphere with listening to these logs of people describing of, yeah, we need fuel so we can try to get the planet recovered from the bombardment. It just gives you a really creepy atmosphere. It's much darker and much more intense than, like, Knights of the Old Republic 1. It feels dark and in a very realistic way. Not dark in terms of, like, oh, demons are invading. Scion is aboard this ship, and Kreia goes to fight him while you and Atten keep trying to get away. And this scene's pretty important, but I'm gonna come back to that later. So for right now, Kreia runs off to fight him. And while she's fighting him, you and Atten, you just sort of continue on your way. Eventually you meet up with Kreia, who gets her hand cut off, and you all escape aboard the Ebon Hawk while the Harbinger is shooting at you. And it either blows up the asteroid field or you can choose to fire on the asteroids. Either way, Progress gets destroyed. And this, as we'll see, has huge repercussions for the whole galaxy. But in the meantime, you go off to Telos, which is where the Harbinger was actually supposed to go. Telos is a world that was bombed during the Jedi Civil War by the Sith. They're trying to recover. They've built this station over top of it, and they're working on restoring the planet, and they are now in a real bind because now that you've destroyed Paragus, they needed that fuel. So it's sort of set Telos back, and the police here have a lot of questions for you when you arrive. I love the atmosphere of Telos. Even at the cantina here, you can see on the signs here, you've got the Twi'lek dancing girls and stuff. But listen to this.
It's always the same story. Things are going well, no one ever thanks the Republic. Oh, when the problems start, that's always where the fingers are pointed first.
This is a Republic guy and an Onderon guy debating about who's to blame for Onderon's problems. Again, this is on Telos, but it's all connected, and it's sort of the point is they're trying to recover from this war, and it's tough going, especially, now with the Paragus incident, but it paints a picture of people are trying to recover from the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War, and it's not a sure thing that they will. And I sort of like that that's the main problem in the galaxy. It's not a lot of concerns about Jedi and Sith. Those are seen as like philosophical or ideological things that don't really concern the common people. The common people in this galaxy are just interested in how am I going to survive. Again, I'm skipping over tons of subplots and things here, not because they're not good, but just because I'm not doing a let's play of this. I did want to include this scene just because people should know. If you do play this game and you kill this guy who guards the door, and then you destroy this control panel here, then your game is kind of screwed because you need to get through this door in order to advance. I did this one time, I was destroying stuff randomly, and I glitched out the game so that I couldn't continue. So don't do what he just did there. I just wanted to include that warning. So you get to talk to Kreia more. Kreia is an interesting character. She's very, very morally ambiguous. She's not light side, not dark side.
Does it matter? Of course it does. Such titles allow you to break the galaxy into light and dark, categorize it. Perhaps I am neither, and I hold both as what they are, pieces of a whole. Know that I am your teacher, and that is enough.
I think this was the first time I realized that this wasn't a normal Star Wars game.
That I felt the call of the Sith, that perhaps once I held the galaxy by its throat, that for every good work that I did, I brought equal harm upon the galaxy, that perhaps what the greatest of the Sith Lords knew of evil they learned from me. What would it matter now? There is only so much comfort in knowing such things, and it is not who I am now.
So Kreia, at one time, was a Sith Lord who was part of a Sith triumvirate, which included Darth Sion, who we saw earlier aboard the Harbinger, and Darth Nihilus, who we'll see here in a minute. They betrayed her at some point and took power for themselves. It's not clear exactly where this is at the time Kreia is telling us this. It will become apparent. And this is a very significant location, but for right now we're on to the surface of Telos. The ship gets stolen by the exchange, and we have to get off the station and go down to the surface of Telos, which I think is beautiful. I am going to hold up here just to include this pan across the beach and the sky, because I think it's one of the most gorgeous sections in the game. For such a relatively brief portion of the game, I love that they took their time and really tried to work on it.
I always feel a sense of calm when I walk the surface of Telos. The Ithorians are truly amazing in their work.
Amazing at wasting the Republic's credits, maybe.
I love these interactions with party members. This is Bayo Dur, who served with you in the Mandalorian Wars and was with you at a battle called Malachor 5, which we'll hear much, much more about that. But Bayo Dur, great voice actor, Roger Denver Smith. He does a terrific job with this character. So you take a shuttle here to the polar region of Telos, where you're captured by these handmaidens, and they imprison your party members, and they take you to see somebody who's named Atris.
You shall not be harmed.
There's a lengthy dialogue between Kreia and Atton here, which is really great, and which again I'm going to cut short, just because I don't want to reveal everything about this game. I just sort of want to touch on what I think are the most significant themes. There's a lot more going on here than I can cover.
You've got to be joking. What is a Jedi Academy doing out here in the middle of nowhere?
It is a place hidden from the galaxy like the Academy on Dantooine. But this place... Oh, Atris, you have been clever. A critical moment approaches.
So you meet Atris, who's this former member of the Jedi Council. She exiled you for going off to fight in the Mandalorian Wars, along with the other members of the Council at the time.
I did not expect to see you again after the day of your sentencing. I thought you had taken the exile's path, wandering the galaxy. Yet you have returned. Why?
They sent you away and you were cut off from the Force, for reasons which again we'll get into later, but Atris is interesting. She's seemingly bringing back the Jedi here. She's got a council chamber. She's got what appears to be an academy, although she doesn't have students, which is odd. But she has a history with your character, the exile, clearly. I don't know. I mean, I almost get the sense that there's a romance there. She, had a crush on the exile, maybe? It's a little ambiguous, but it makes her a very interesting character, and we'll see just how interesting she is later. But for right now, she argues with you a little. You rehash the whole Mandalorian Wars. Was it a good idea or not? How could you destroy Malachor 5 like that? And now, on top of everything else, you've destroyed Paragus, so she's mad at you for that. You're not getting along well at this point, and eventually, kind of no matter what you do, even if you offer to help, she says, well, look, get out of here and take your ship. If you want to help, go look for the other members of the Jedi Council who exiled you, who are spread across these worlds of Nar Shaddaa, Dantooine, Onderon/Duxon, and Korriban. Or you can bypass all that in this conversation and just be like, you know what, screw you, Atris. And she's like, well then, screw you and the Ebon Hawk you rode in on. Get out of here.
When it fails, the Republic will not finance another.
But depending how far you choose to go, I mean, this conversation can go on forever, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. But eventually, our handmaidens take you away. They say, all right, you and your people, get out of here, take your ship.
Come with us.
And from that point on, the game kind of starts to open up a bit. And you start to go to these places like Nar Shaddaa. And you meet a lot of interesting characters. I'm backtracking here a bit because the core of the game, going across these planets and fighting bad guys and whatnot, that's all good. And that's, as we'll see, important to the story. But the main parts I like are these character interactions. Like, here's Bao-Dur again. You hear his perspective on the war, on what it was like to fight the Mandalorians, and you hear about how the war affected him. You meet a lot of characters, like this is Mira, one of my favorite characters. She's a bounty hunter on Nar Shaddaa, but she's not an evil bounty hunter.
You have this glow. I mean, not a real
There's some
glow,
stuff
but
that's just fun, like this is if you're a light-sided male, one of Atris's handmaidens stows away with you. You have this conversation, which I'm surprised the LucasArts people let it get through, but thank God they did, because it makes the whole game world feel more real.
Oh, well, it shows. It's like you're hooked up to a power coupling. It's weird. I mean, not bad weird, it's just weird. For a minute there, I thought you and the handmaiden... But it's just the Force. You know, hooked up a power coupling. You know?
I think this is the most realistic depiction of how people talk about relationships in any Star Wars thing that I've seen, certainly.
Got it. Just checking.
And it's these little character interactions. They're what make the game. You have people like Atton, who seems to be a Han Solo kind of guy, but in the end we find out he's got a lot more going on than you first realize. This character, now she's a servant of Darth Nihilus. She's voiced by Kelly Hu, who does a great job. I mean, I'll shut up here and try to let you hear a few of her lines. She's just great. Darth Nihilus sends her out looking for you.
I have felt it too, my lord. A disturbance in the Force. It was difficult to make out, my lord. At first it was such a quiet thing. I did not notice it. But now I wonder if it has always been there. I merely could not hear it before. The sound built so slowly, yet when you listen for it, you can make out the strains, even over the background life of the universe. Do you feel it is a... You are the darkness in which all life dies, my lord. All life exists to feed your power. And my life is yours.
In the event, what happens is that she joins your team.
I felt you, heard you through the Force.
Visas seems very disturbed. It's kind of shocking. It's very powerful. You get the sense Darth Nihilus has badly mistreated her, and she worships you in an almost unhealthy way. She's a very sad character, but you can ultimately help her.
If I bring you before my master, untested, without your potential realized, then you will be lost to me, and I cannot allow that to happen. It would be as if one brought fire to a paradise valley, shattered a cavern of rare crystal, or blinded a painter.
And it's these kind of conversations that really make up the game, and it just makes the world very, very rich as you explore it. And you go across these different worlds, you meet Mandalore and the Mandalorians, you meet all kinds of different characters as you're in the quest to find the Jedi and figure out, what happened to you? Why did you lose your connection to the Force? Why are you getting it back now? And how do we stop the Sith?
The fact we are even having a conversation is gratitude.
And all these characters have a different perspective on things. It just makes you feel like this really is a whole galaxy. Patton and Mira really seem like they should get together. I'm sorry, they're perfect for each other. It's these little lines that make the game just work.
Here.
It seems quiet, just the wind. But deep beneath the surface, you can feel the pain of what took place here. There's great power in this place, for those who can hear its call.
You smell that? It's the scent of death and overpopulated beasts coming from that cave.
And the combat in this game, I think it's pretty easy. Most times I'm playing with the difficulty ramped way up, and the first thing I do is get Force Lightning and just use it a lot. The combat is not what this game's about. If you play it for that, you'll be like, it's meh. But that's not what it is. It's fine. I mean, I have no problem with it. It's perfectly adequate. You can use laser blasters, or you can use lightsabers, or swords, or force powers, whatever. It's perfectly good. It's easy to learn, and there's nothing hard about it, and that's about all you can say for it. Why you play this game is for the characters and the story and the writing. I've explained some stuff, but I haven't quite got to everything that's significant about this game. And to be fair, there's a lot of stuff like these giant monsters fighting soldiers during a coup on Onderon that's just crazy Star Wars stuff. I mean, it's a Star Wars game, so it's gonna have some stuff that's just big, wild, action set-piece battle. I mean, it would have disappointed people if it didn't, but I think all that stuff is perfectly good. But underneath it all, there's this underlying thematic component, and it's sort of what I talked about before, about this galaxy is really on the brink, and they're suffering the consequences of the Mandalorian Wars, which your character, the Jedi Exile, was a central figure in that. And it's really about how they're coping with the effects of this huge war that just has torn up the galaxy. And at the same time, it's a portrait of the exile and how they react to it. I compare it to Lawrence of Arabia, which is an epic war film. It had these big battle scenes, but it also had this quality of trying to understand T.E. Lawrence's psyche. And it's this mixture, I think, of macro and micro, if you will, levels of how the world responds to war and how people respond to war, how individual men and women handle it. It's that mixture of both. You've got characters who are coping psychologically with things that happen to them during this war. Mira loses her family and is raised by Mandalorians. Visas, her homeworld's destroyed. The Handmaiden lost her father in the wars. Bayo-Duri lost his arm. He lost his friends. He was at this tremendous battle. He's like Robert Oppenheimer. He built this huge doomsday machine that blew up Malachor 5. Beneath all the Star Wars stuff of laser battles and girls dancing for giant slugs for some reason, this game has all of that stuff, but it's got something else besides that. So in the end, you come back to the Jedi Enclave. I'm assuming a light-sided ending. I'll explain why, but I think it's more complete. If there's a dark side ending, the Jedi are all dead. You killed them for revenge, but it's not as clear-cut than what happened. So if you save them, you're back here at the Jedi Enclave, and you're gonna ask the Jedi, look, why did you cut me off from the Force? A. B, you should know the Sith are back, and we have to try to unite to stop them. Kreia comes in the Jedi Enclave here, and she comes in a little behind you while you're off to meet with the remaining Jedi Council members and try to figure out where we're going from here. And so at this point, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I figured at this point, the first time I played the game, Darth Nihilus is going to attack, or Darth Sion, because they're both still out there somewhere, we know that. I didn't know what to expect from Kreia.
The years have not been kind to us both, it seems. But perhaps now they will see the truth.
And I feel, honestly, I feel almost bad talking over this. This scene is incredible. The voice acting in particular, I just have to say now, the voice acting in this game is amazing. So you talk to the Jedi here, you explain some stuff about what happened. And they basically say, well, we didn't cut you off from the Force. It was the war, and you formed connections with other people. And at the Battle of Malachor 5, when you ordered the planet destroyed, just the horror and the pain of all those deaths cut you off. And it's that great battle that did it, that last battle of the war. And they basically are saying, you feed on other people, you draw your power from them. And that's why you've been getting stronger as you fought across all these planets and killed all these enemy soldiers and met all these people. You've been growing stronger. And they're saying this really isn't wholesome. It's not the Jedi way. We really can't allow you to keep going around doing this. And so they're basically saying that, well, yeah, you did help find us. You've helped us out a lot. You do seem to be fighting the Sith, but, sorry, kid. We just have to cut you off from the Force. So at the end of this long conversation, they explain what happened.
You already know the answer. You've noticed it in those who travel with you.
Have you noticed that when you act, others follow?
Those that travel with you.
They follow you without question, without hesitation.
Against their instincts, and sometimes against their sense.
It is because you are a leader, but that still fails to grasp the meaning of what I'm trying to tell you.
And that is why the Mandalorian Wars echo within you still.
We did not cut you off from the Force. You were merely deafened to it. Because of that last battle of the Mandalorian Wars.
The screams of countless thousands, Jedi and Mandalorians, crushed by the planet's gravity, annihilated.
Their lives still scream across the surface of that dead planet, and within you. You cut yourself off because you had to if you were to survive. You had hints of it in the war on Doxon. Malachor was simply the final blow.
You were deafened.
At last, you could hear.
You were broken.
You were whole.
You were blinded.
And at last, you saw.
When you returned to us, we saw what had happened. You carry all those deaths at Malachor within you. And it has left a hole, a hunger that cannot be filled. Our judgment before remains. Exile. You must leave. And you must leave without your tie to the Force.
this is where Kreia really starts to shine. See, Kreia hates the Force. She hates the fact that the Jedi rely on the Force. And she was impressed by the fact that you, as the Jedi exile, you cut yourself off from the Force and managed to survive. You learn to not be dependent on it. And this is where Kreia finally explains. The Jedi are about to go ahead and cut you off from the Force again. But Kreia's saying no. This is somebody who's been cut off, they chose it, and they came back.
You will not harm her ever again. As you would pass judgment on her, I have come to pass judgment on you all. Do you wish to feel the teachings born of the Mandalorian Wars, of all tragedies that scream across the galaxy? Let me show you, you who have forever seen the galaxy through the Force. See it through the eyes of the exile. How could you ever hope to know the threat you face when you have never walked in the dark places of the galaxy, faced war and death on such a scale? If you had traveled far enough, rather than waiting for the echo to reach you, perhaps you would have seen it for what it was. The Mandalorian Wars were a series of massacres that masked another war, a war of conversion, culminating in a final atrocity that no Jedi could walk away from, save one. And that is what I sought to understand. How one could turn away from such power, give up the Force, and still live. But I see what happened now.
So Kreia goes back to Atris. She leaves you here in the ruins of the Jedi Enclave, which is beautiful, by the way, but eerie. Again, I love the art style here. I know it may look primitive by today's standard, but it's really a great atmosphere, if not like photorealistic graphics. Kreia has gone basically back to Atris to tell her about you and to tell her where she's going. And so you have a conversation. If you're male, it'll be with Visas. If you're female, it's with this guy, the Disciple. It's about how you draw strength from your connections to others and how the Jedi Order are basically out of touch. And again, I love this theme that, the Jedi, they got out of touch and over-reliant on the Force, which is Kreia's kind of her whole thesis, actually.
Where they look at you and see the death of the Force, I look at you and see hope for all life.
This is a really nice interlude before you go off to Telos to confront Atris. So, Kreia goes and talks to Atris. Kreia has known all along that Atris has fallen to the dark side. She's been collecting Sith holocrons, and while she was trying to bring back the Jedi Order, she in fact fell to the dark side herself. I think implied because she's so bitter about the Jedi exile. Like I said, there's some suggestion she was in love with him or her. Kind of either way, maybe a bit stronger if it's a male exile. Kreia basically says, yeah, the exile's gonna come to see you. Kreia's going to the Sith Academy, which is on Malachor 5. She doesn't say that here, but it becomes very obvious that that's what she's talking about. That's where the place in the flashback we saw of Kreia being betrayed was. She tells Atris she's going there. Atris thinks it's because she wants to meet her there, and Atris is sort of like, okay, I'm gonna fight all the Sith, and then I'm gonna go enter the Sith Academy there. Kreia, in fact, knows that no, Atris isn't gonna come see me, but she's gonna tell the exile where I went. Kreia is manipulating everything.
It is such a quiet thing to fall, but far more terrible is to admit it.
I love this line.
Your mistress awaits. She has much to share with you.
It's very understated. Kreia leaves, and you get there just in time to confront Atris in her room of Sith holocrons here. She's sort of unabashedly evil.
All this collected knowledge, all these teachings of combat and the Force, They're mine to command. And if I must use it to end you, I will.
The two of you fight, and you're going to have a choice here at the end you can kill her or you can spare her if you're playing light side. Again, this is why playing light side gives you a more complete experience and a better story arc we'll see here coming up after we beat Atris here. Atris, she still hates you. She can't believe you're going to show her mercy as she's sitting here surrounded by these Sith holocrons. She tells you, okay, Krea's gone off to Malachor 5. The Sith, Darth Nihilus, is coming to attack Telos. What will you do? This is the most important line in the game right here. I will do nothing except tell you that I am sorry. I did not realize that the Mandalorian Wars would hurt others that had known me and cared for me. This is the most important line because the exile has learned the lesson of the whole game, which is how war affects people. And that's the whole theme, is how the destruction of Paragus had ripple effects. The destruction of Malachor 5 had ripple effects. The Mandalorian Wars affected all these people. Paragus affected all these people. Everything that the exile has done as they've fought across all these planets has had all these consequences. Whether it's economic or social, personal, psychological, spiritual, it's about that effect. And only at that moment, when the exile's talking to Atris, who, again, it's implied that they were sort of a thing, maybe at one time, he or she finally says, you know, I'm sorry, I really didn't think through what I was doing. It's a huge moment. In my opinion, it states the whole theme of the game. Now, of course, they're still fighting, so you're going to go and fight Darth Nihilus, who's attacking Telos. But I see that, again, as fitting in with the light side very well, because the exile has a chance to redeem themselves. You know, they kind of screwed Telos over in the beginning if they destroyed Paragus, or, you know, Paragus got destroyed because they were there, whether they fired the shot or not. And saving Telos is sort of the chance to try to put things right. And so the exile here is kind of getting that chance at redemption. It's a powerful motif. This is Karth from the first game. He's on a ship fighting the Sith Armada at Telos. And you'll notice that he too here is going to bring up Malachor 5.
Sir, at this distance, our weapons will barely scratch it.
You know, I kind of think the Sith Lords was a weak subtitle for this game. It should have been called Echoes of Malachor, but maybe that would have given it away. It's about all the consequences of that war and that battle. So here is a ship from Malachor 5 that Darth Nihilus got, being boarded by Mandalorians, which is who you fought at Malachor 5. So again, it's really bringing back that, okay, this is sort of our do-over for the Mandalorian Wars. This time we're going to put things right. I mean, yeah, it's a video game, so it's still going to be in the form of big battles and stuff. But there's underlying thematic material here that makes it more than just, okay, this is the final boss fight, or the penultimate boss fight. Actually, no, I guess there are two boss fights after this encounter we're about to have with Darth Nihilus. I love this scene of Mandalore boarding the Ravager. I didn't get to cover him much in this video, but Mandalore, God, he's a great character.
Breached the hull of the Sith vessel and are securing the area. The vessel has suffered extensive structural damage, but its particle fields still maintain a minimal atmosphere within the ship. And our cargo? It's being brought aboard. Soon, teams will be dispatched to the target sites. Do the Republic forces suspect? No, Mandalore. The proton cores do not emit a signature the Republic ships can detect. If they do pick up the signal, they will assume it to be emanating from the ship's missile bays. Did you get an ID signature on this vessel? You were right about the vessel, Mandalore. It is of Malachor. It still bears the wounds of Mandalorian.
What's he talk about?
Then let's finish this. And remind the galaxy of Malachor 5.
Malachor 5.
Nothing you need to worry about.
It's all coming back to Malachor 5. And I mean, you might say, well, it's just a way of driving the story. But I mean, everything is connected with that. So you board the Ravager here, and you fight a lot of Darth Nihilus' men, and Visas comes with you and Mandalore. And you have to plant some bombs, because you're going to blow up the ship and try to end the assault, but it's kind of implied that just blowing up the ship wouldn't kill Nihilus, because he's not human, or whatever he was at this point. He's like a demon who's succumbed fully to the Force. It'll get explained here, but for right now it might not be obvious, but Kreia has sort of been grooming the Exile all this time. Like, you are the one person who can take down both Scion and Nihilus and the Jedi because of what you've done. It's not a major thing, but it's like the Exile knows how to survive without the Force, and none of these other people on either side can imagine doing that. So Kreia's like, perfect. You're the one who can take them on. And as we'll see that here when we're about to confront Lord Nihilus here, after we plant some bombs.
Reach one of the target sites. Place the proton core. Prime it. Then give the signal, Mandalore.
So I mean, very Star Wars-y bridge, space battle going on outside of the traditional Star Wars battle. I absolutely love that he never speaks or has subtitles. You intuit what he's saying by your responses. This is how you craft a villain.
He doesn't understand. He thinks he can survive it.
So yeah, here, he tries to feed on the Exile. It doesn't work. Normally this is how he kills people, but it's not going to fly with the Jedi Exile. So at that point, you know, they can take him on. Side note on the combat, I don't know how people make it through this game if they don't use Force Lightning. Force Lightning is kind of like playing with a cheat, but my gosh. So we've got an interlude here with Visas. You know, she's trying to stay in the fight, and you have a variety of ways to keep her in. This is where I didn't show it, but you can, you know, take Visas back to her meditation chamber and let her come to peace with what's happened to her, what happened to her planet that Darth Nihilus destroyed, and stuff like that. Or you can let her embrace her hatred. I think there's a version of this where Visas dies. I've never done that. I keep her alive even when I'm playing dark-sided. as boss fights go, this isn't like the most challenging, but so we defeat Darth Nihilus, he collapses, and Visas wants to look upon his face. That's really interesting. Her response varies depending on what you've done in the game. She says something that's sort of a comment on you. You get Nihilus's mask, but you don't see his face, which I love. It seems right that Visas, she sort of sees through the Force, that only she gets to do it. And then in a minute we'll see his body's just going to go up in force lightning and smoke. I mean, so he's not in any meaningful sense a human being anymore. He's like some sort of demon or corruption or something in the Force. A lot of people, I think, were disappointed that he's not the main antagonist, since his face is all over the marketing, or his mask, I should say, was all over the marketing materials. Honestly, I kind of love that, because you're expecting it's going to be him, and you turn out, oh no, he's actually going like the third or fourth most evil person in the game. And depending on how you play it, you might be the most evil. So we blow up his ship, go back to Telos. Depending on certain things you've chosen, you might see Karth and or Bastila from the first game. But then we get to Malachor 5. This is where it all started. The wrecked planet, the last battle of the Mandalorian War happened. Baodur, at your command, fired the mass shadow generator. But I want to go back to this scene from the beginning.
He cannot kill what he cannot see, and power has blinded him long ago. Run.
Krea's confrontation with Sion. Let's listen to what they've got to say.
I sense you, my master. Faint, weak.
Your senses betray you, as you betrayed me.
After all that's happened, still you live. You are difficult to kill.
For one as limited as you, perhaps. To have fallen so far and learned nothing, that is your failing.
The failure is yours. No longer do your whispers crawl within my skull. No longer do I suffer beneath teachings that weaken us. And now you run in search of the Jedi. They are all dead, save one. And one broken Jedi cannot stop the darkness that is to come.
Perhaps we shall see.
So that's their fight, but the key thing here is that it foreshadows this fight. When you get to Malachor 5, you confront Sion. And Krea basically said there early on, he cannot fight what he cannot see, and power has blinded him long ago. That's kind of the key to this whole fight with Sion, because Sion is basically immortal. He can keep regenerating. You fight him here, you take him down, and he just restores himself. Well, you have to win by eroding his will, by persuading him, look, Sion, lost cause here, you're not gonna ever be Krea's favorite or whatever you want. You just have to give up. And that's the thing, in this fight, he ultimately comes to terms with all he did was survive based on the Force. It was all he could do. He was dependent on the Force. And like everybody, like Nihilus and like the Jedi, it became a weakness because he became dependent on it. And you basically convince him of that over the course of this fight. And I remember, the first time I played through the game, all this was going by me. I didn't follow what was going on. But then when I replayed it and saw that scene with Krea, I realized, oh, that's foreshadowing what's going to happen here at the end. And I realized that this is more complex than your typical game narrative. It's got these layers to it, and themes and scenes that reinforce them. The more I see it, at first I thought the ending's incoherent. Then I thought, oh, the ending is incoherent but good. now I've pretty much come around to actually the ending makes perfect sense. You just have to really be paying attention. And it all does reinforce itself. I mean, I know the game isn't necessarily what the developers intended, because it was rushed, and we know there's the restoration mod and all that, but in many ways, what they shipped is still pretty complete in terms of conveying a vision. I mean, Darth Sion here, what he says at the end, that's, again, sort of reinforcing the whole theme of the game.
To keep living when the universe dies around you. Kreia, she will try to break you, to teach you how far someone can fall. Her weakness is you. She has done all this, all of it, for you. I'm glad to leave this place, at last.
So now we finally go to the core of the Atreus Academy, where we meet up again with Kreia.
At last you have arrived. Is Malachor as you remember? You no doubt have many questions. I would be a poor teacher if I did not give you the answers you seek here now. Yes, it is all that is left unsaid upon which tragedies are built.
I love that line. It is all that is unsaid upon which tragedies are built.
Past and future in mine. Would you destroy us both before learning them? If so, then do it, for you have already failed me. The apprentice must kill the master.
So here's your final fight with Kreia. There's kind of 2 rounds to it. As you can imagine, if you say I will not fight you, you still fight. First you fight her, and then at some point she summons some lightsabers for some reason that just you fight them. That part, I mean, it is. It's a video game boss fight. Like I said throughout, the combat is not what this game is about. Honestly, if you could just press a button to skip the combat and advance the story, I would probably have done that after my first time. Again, not that it's bad, but we're not playing this game to know if we can defeat these floating lightsabers. We're playing the game because we want to understand what Kreia has to say, and I feel like at the end here, you're going to understand that. So in that regard, I feel like it's a complete ending. It may not be completely satisfying in terms of the Sith threat, but Kreia explains a lot here. And I am not going to show it all.
Save me. You already have. It is enough what you have done. From now into the future. It is your choice. I had hoped you would follow Revan's path.
Again, I think it reinforces the theme of the game that you can ask her about big things like the Republic and small things like, oh, what's going to happen to Mira? What's going to happen to At? The game cares about both the big picture and the individual picture, the individual people. And that's a rare thing, I think, in any fiction, to have those multiple levels.
Many things do I see as I gaze here from the heart of Malachor. This place channels such energies.
Again, I'm skipping huge chunks of stuff. This dialogue
Yet you do not
amazing.
know them still. Feel them through the Force, feel what they feel, hear their thoughts and know them as I fought to know you. They were the lost Jedi, you know. The true Jedi, upon which the future will be built. They simply needed a leader and a teacher. She will stop hunting life and instead live it. She was not born to be a predator, despite her true father and the life she led within the shadow of Nar Shaddaa. She will miss you and think of you often.
Some people might say it's contrived that she can see the future here, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I could maybe see that, but to me, it's like, okay, at the moment of both fulfillment of her purpose in life and her death, she gets this blast of clarity from the Force or whatever that allows her to see the future. It works for me.
Many battles does that one have left in him, as Revan intended. A general needs an army as he needs those he trusts, and Canderous is a loyal beast, no matter how much he has broken upon Revan's will. But you know this. The Republic will fall, as it always has, a fall that will take millennia under the care of the herds of Ithor. The surface of Telos will bloom again, and its golden fields shall again harbor scientists and thinkers. And complacent and peaceful, it shall forget the time that Saul Karath orbited it and brought fire to its skies. But it shall be a home world again to others who will stretch out across the galaxy and bring life.
Rest now, Kreia. Your time in this place is over. I love that line. It's sweet. It's very powerful for some reason. So, Kreia dies. The mass shadow generator gets reactivated. The Sith Academy's getting destroyed. The Ebon Hawk comes up kind of out of nowhere. And you escape as Malachor 5 is really getting destroyed this time. It's really falling apart. This is an important visual metaphor, because the first shot of this game was the Ebon Hawk badly damaged flying into the Paragus facility. Now the Ebon Hawk is repaired and flying away. This is again the light side ending. And that's Knights of the Old Republic 2. I still say that Atton and Mira should have gotten together. I mean, it just makes sense, people. Let's be honest.